Live. Welcome everybody. Thanks for making time to join today's webinar. We're super excited to have you. We had over 100 registrations. We already have 35 people who are at least on time, and there are more joining every second. Yeah, it's one of the larger webinars, so really shows how important the topic is. A very good indicator. Flexible culture is still one of the main topics, and we are here today to discuss this topic. And we have a little change in plans because we're thinking about having Molly and I to discuss flexible culture. However, Molly, for some emergency family reasons, short notice, had to fly to another country. But therefore, I'm very happy to have her colleague. Look, last second I couldn't change the name, but it's I have Beth here. And I think she is equally as good to discuss this topic because Beth's talking to a lot of clients, a lot of big companies about flexibility and can share a lot of insights. But I guess before we get started into the discussion, I think it makes sense to have a short introduction round so everybody knows who are the two people actually talking in this webinar. And yeah, Beth, do you want to start?
Yeah, of course. Hi, so I'm Beth. I am the Director of Growth at Flexa, and so I get to sit in this amazing place in between the companies that we work with who are trying to build amazingly flexible companies, but also with the candidates and the users of Flexa who are trying to research their next best company, their next best opportunity. So I'm really excited to be able to share with you. As a warning, I do have a dog with me who, if anyone comes into the office, which will happen, he will bark. So if we're interrupted by this currently very innocent looking dog, then I apologize in advance.
Yeah, I think no need to apologize. I guess it's the reality of new work, right? And
dog-friendly offices.
So yes, absolutely. Cool, then let me add to this. So my name is Patrick. I'm here. Usually I live in the north of Germany. Today I'm in Munich in the south of Germany. And I'm one of the founders of WorkFlex. And with WorkFlex, we support companies to enable work from anywhere as a benefit, but also business travel. And we take care of all the compliance topics around. So when companies want to do a work from anywhere policy, there are a lot of like tax topics, social security, labor law, insurance, etc. We take care of this, and we do this for over 200 companies. So I talk with a lot of companies about flexibility, but also ourselves as a company. We are around 80 people today. We are 100% remote. We are super flexible. So I guess I can share insights from two perspectives, from our clients, but also being the founder and CEO of WorkFlex itself. But so just organizational, maybe before we get into this, so we're using Demi as a platform, and you may have figured out on the right-hand side, there's a chat. So of course, Molly and I have a good discussion, not Molly, sorry, Beth, prepared, but also please involve yourself, right? If you have opinions, etc., please put it in the chat. And before we get started, I'm also interested in how flexible your culture is today. So there's a question to the audience, and I'm putting up a poll right now. So 1 is you believe your company is not flexible at all, and 5 is very flexible. So we're getting first answers in. Yeah, it was interesting to see how are we talking to, right? Are you already very flexible? Then probably you can also share a lot of insights with us and also the audience. So it seems that no company is not flexible at all, and then it seems to be quite mixed. So we should have then a good discussion, I guess. You may involve your dog as well. So we have around 1 hour planned, and what we want to discuss is 2 things. So number 1 is how to build a flexible culture, and I think Beth, you also then probably can share a lot of insights from other companies. And then in the second part, we're going to deep dive more into work from anywhere. Often company calls it workation, so people can temporarily work from abroad as a benefit. We brought some statistics and digital insights. Well, you see now as a third point, there's a Q&A. I actually prefer to have Q&A also during the session, so let's not only have it until the end. So I think anybody can ask questions straight away. And yeah, I think with this, let's get it started. And we prepared a few discussion questions. And for me, when I talk to companies, HR departments, managers, etc., a big question is always, what does it mean to have a flexible culture? And yeah, Beth, maybe you can give us some insights. How do you define having a flexible culture?
Yeah, I think it's super interesting as well with starting with that question of, how would you personally say how flexible your company is? And one of the real issues with flexible working is that it's so vague as a concept, right? And that's one of the things that we really try and solve at Flexa is we try and really be very, very data led on what does flexibility actually mean? What does that mean to different people? And also helping companies be really transparent, right? So if I say, oh yeah, we're really flexible, you might still not know what that means for you, whether that's suitable for you, right? Like if you need fully remote, I could still be considering myself a flexible company, even if I only allow 1 day a week working at home. So I think that there's a real lack of depth in the broader industry when we talk about flexible working. And so we've really tried to fix that. But then in terms of what does it mean to be flexible as a company or to have a flexible culture, I actually think that it's really, really trust based. And that's why people like it so much. If you look at all of the different ways that you can measure flexibility or think about flexibility, having the opportunity to be just treated as an adult and make your own decisions about your own way of working and your own life, that really seems to be what people are most attracted to.
Yeah, very interesting that you boiled it down to the end of the day, trust. How can you, so if you talk to companies and you say you also try to measure it, how would you then measure this level of trust or then flexibility? I mean, I guess it's quite hard. So what would you say to this?
Yeah, totally. I think we actually have a slide that so I can
Yeah,
talk
let me
through
jump
it.
a little bit to the
Yeah,
bottom. This one you referred to, right?
perfect. Yeah. So we measure flexibility on 6 different areas, and we have, I believe, 85 million data points now that from companies, from massive organizations to very small organizations that have helped us narrow down to these kind of 6 areas. Some of them really self-explanatory, right? So location, are you in the office? Are you at home? What's the balance between that? Hours, are you allowed to pick your own hours completely? Is it a very async culture? Do you have core hours, or is it a kind of standard 9 to 5, or for a lot of people 9 to 6? Someone's unable to see the slides.
Yeah, we're also seeing this right now in the chat. Can anyone else confirm? Is it only Nicola who cannot see it, or anyone else? So everybody can see it. I will nevertheless also start sharing it again, so maybe this will help. Otherwise, it seems that most people can see it. By the way, for all that can't see it, whatever happens today, we will also share the slides, but also the entire talk today afterwards.
Oh, it's working now. Amazing.
And actually, it works now.
Fantastic.
It's so simple. Huh? Okay, but we stopped. Last one was at the hours.
Yeah. So you've got hours, which really interestingly in our latest data coming from the kind of candidate side, so individuals working in businesses, they are caring a lot less about the hours that they work. Actually, 51% of people have said that they don't actually mind whether they have flexible hours or not, which has been a big change actually in the last sort of 6 months. So the third one is benefits, right? And this is where you really start to see the breadth and the complexity of when we talk about flexibility.
Can I stop you here for a second? Because this that I didn't hear about, most people don't care about the hours work. I mean, that's insane. I mean, if I think back 20 or 30 years, you have to clock in and clock out at a company. So now we're seeing, and actually the system was also meant to protect kind of workers, but now it seems they don't know. So it seems to be like a rapid shift.
Yeah, it's super interesting, and our read of it. So when we've analyzed the data, there's a massive correlation between people who have flexibility in location and also in autonomy, which I'll talk about in a minute, and with people who don't care what hours they work. And that makes sense, right? Like if I'm working from home, nobody's clocking me in or out, right? I'm kind of getting my work done by myself. And also I think it's important to say that most of our data is from knowledge workers and office-based roles. This is obviously not necessarily the case if you were working in like a manufacturing job or in a retail job where, you know, you can't turn up whenever you want and go home whenever you want because the shop has to be open a certain number of hours in the day. So it's been a really interesting shift. And then we've got benefits, which self-explanatory. Everyone knows what benefits are, sort of how happy are people with the benefits you offer. Then we have work-life balance.
May I ask about this, Beth? So how does benefits relate to the flexibility, right? Because I could imagine a company offers a lot of benefits, maybe a company car, but it's maybe very inflexible in other dimensions. So and vice versa, a company maybe who allows a lot of location flexibility. There's also a great benefit by itself. So can it be that you're very strong on the benefit side, but not considered to be flexible on other sides?
Definitely, and that's why at the end these six elements of a flex score come together to make up an overall flex score. So it balances out and it's weighted depending on what the candidate demand is, right? So if people are really interested in location, then that's going to weight higher in the flex score rankings. I think when we talk about like flexibility benefits, some of the most important ones are things like enhanced parental leave or childcare. So benefits that are traditionally listed as a benefit, but that actually allow individuals to come to work and to do their work in their best way when they might not be able to if they didn't have access to those things. But you know, and some of them are the kind of standard benefits like gym passes and things like that. But I think that when we're taking a more holistic view of work and life being blended together, then the benefits really come into play.
Yeah, the other day I read a report and I had a discussion. It's very interesting because back then, like way back, a couple of centuries ago, years ago, benefits was usually about the holidays, or also the pension, the payments towards the pension. Then at least like for a lot of startups, like equity in the company, kind of like you belong, your own part of the company. And now it seems to be changing again, right? So what do you see are like nowadays the benefits of the future?
Yeah, so a lot of them are around that work-life balance. So that fourth one. So the most popular benefits are from our data are enhanced parental leave and a work from anywhere scheme. So it's things that allow people to really live their life alongside their work. Yeah, Niall, that's an amazing way to group that together. Anything that gives us more choice over how we work and how we live is really popular. People care a lot less about stuff like free beers on a Friday or, you know, those kind of benefits that now feel a bit old-fashioned. So just to run through the final three quickly. So work-life balance. Again, we survey both the company perspective of this and the employee perspective. So this is verified by the people working. So this one in particular, verified by the people working at TUI, who are a big travel company. And then these final two, I think, are the most interesting. So autonomy means essentially, are you allowed to get on with it and have control of your own work and your own day? Or do you have somebody sort of micromanaging you and making sure that you're doing things at a certain time? Or does it matter if I go to the gym at lunchtime and come back and finish my work in the evening? Do I feel in control? Comes back to that agency. And then role modeling, like senior leadership role modeling is a really important one. We basically found through our research that you can have as many policies as you like. You know, you can have every single amazing benefit, every single amazing flexible working policy. But if your senior team don't do it, if they don't take the Friday afternoon off, if they don't work, they come in a bit late because they're dropping their kids off, then nobody else will either. And so that role modeling score is really about when we take the policies off the page and put them into real life, is the flexible culture actually being lived in, or is it just being talked about?
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting to see how you put it into these like 6 categories and we actually make it measurable. So this helps a lot. So I think that the two of us, obviously, we are very pro-flexible. We see a lot of benefits. I see, according to the poll, also at least half of the audience here have a flexible culture. But however, if you follow the media, there's also a lot of people, more like conservative companies, who don't believe in flexibility. And I think recently the headlines was done by Nike, right? And the CEO said the business performance is bad because of the increased flexible culture, working from home, working abroad, etc. So what do you think? Like flexible culture, can it also be negative?
So I think that the blaming flexible work, which is essentially blaming your workforce for bad business performance, is quite an easy cop out, right? Like that's a way out of having a more difficult conversation about how you're running a business. But I think that, yeah, flexible cultures can hurt business performances. They absolutely can, if they are implemented in the wrong way, right? If you are absolutely just having no boundaries, no expectations, no focus on any of the things that are important in building a flexible culture, and you just haphazardly give it a go, then it's not going to work. Because running a flexible business and being a manager to a distributed team is different. It's very different. I mean, you must see this with having 80 people all in different locations, right? Do you think there is an alternative universe in which that could have gone badly?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think, so from my opinion, I also think there's a different degree of flexibility that fits to your company DNA. So when I think, Beth, and you and I talk, we want to be flexible employers. I think we are rather on the one side of the extreme, but maybe for some companies, being in the office 5 days a week is very important. So I know, for example, consultancies who like solve problems in teams, or marketing agencies who are creative, right, but they're in the office with other people. So maybe being super flexible is not the right one for every company. So every company, I guess, needs to kind of think about, okay, where's the right level of flexibility?
Totally.
But
one that we see is like lab-based companies, right? If you're a bunch of scientists, you have to be in a lab 5 days a week to get your work done. You're not going to be having location as one of your aspects of flexibility. But that doesn't mean that you can't have any of the other amazing bits of flexibility, like flexible hours or enhanced parental leave, or having a really output-driven autonomous culture. Like there are other ways to be flexible that don't involve working from home.
Yeah. I mean, you supported a lot of companies, so did we. What was your experience like supporting companies becoming more flexible? Like, what do you hear from clients 1 year later, etc.? So what can be the benefits of implementing a flexible culture? What do you hear in the market?
Yeah, it's overwhelmingly positive when it's done well, right? So we have companies who've gone from really struggling to hire, particularly like senior women, or people from diverse backgrounds, and you're really struggling to increase the diversity of your team. And you know that you want to do that, and you know that the benefits are amazing, more innovative, more creative, more collaborative, and you just can't quite make that happen. And that's because, if we look at the data, 86% of people now say that they want some form of flexible working. But if we cut that data to only look at women or people of color, that goes up to 97%, right? And this is, millions of people that have been surveyed to get these results. And what's amazing about that is if you open up your flexibility, you open yourself up to a much bigger talent pool of diverse people, of amazing talent who maybe just don't live in the same location as you. So we see a massive impact on hiring. We see a massive impact on retention because people are happier in their jobs and want to stay longer. And actually, once you move to what we call an output-based culture, where everything is based on results rather than input, right? Like I will talk to my team and say, well, I don't care if that piece of content took you 5 hours or 3 hours to write. I don't care. What I care about is, did the work get done? Did we hit our targets? Are we making progress? And shifting to that, you build a much more resilient and motivated group of employees because they feel more connected to the business and more involved in the business's success.
And by the way, we have the first question from Chelsea. So great, thanks for throwing your input in. And for those who cannot read, Chelsea's asking, what do you advise for trying to change a manager's mindset? We have a lot with our FWR, not sure what it means, I guess managers. If I do it for one, I have to do it for the others. We try and explain this won't always be the case, but it's not always easy. And I think that's a very common stereotype, or it might be true also in reality, that we hear. A flexible working request, yeah, thanks for this. So what do you say to managers who are maybe a little bit skeptical about the benefits?
Yeah, so I think that and Chelsea, you're absolutely not alone. So many people have this problem. The first thing that I'd advise doing is really digging into why they're afraid of that. So what are they worried about? What do they think is going to happen? If they did have to approve flexible working requests for everybody, what would happen? And it will probably be an unfounded fear, because there's so much data that shows that flexible working is actually just as productive and actually more engaging and more motivating to people. I think then I'd be looking at which teams this is coming from. So it's really scary for sales teams and customer success, people who are very, very customer facing, to tackle flexible working requests, because they're just so not used to that way of working, and maybe they have particular patterns. So then I'd be looking at, is there a genuine reason why flexible working would be difficult? And then the third thing I think is a fear of complexity. So we really advise that the entire company has a flexible working policy, right? Rather than going to each individual and making, this person's got a 4-day week, and this person starts at 10 a.m. and this person, works from home 3 days a week, and this person doesn't. That is stressful for managers. I would find that personally very difficult to manage my team if everybody had a different working pattern. But because we have a blanket flexibility that goes across the entire team, including the managers, it's actually very easy to handle. And so look at whether there are, like, what's the most common flexible working request? And what's actually going to work for the business as well as the employees. I don't think that you have to be a fairy godmother and grant everybody's request. Like, that's not what we're here to do. We're here to try and make as many people as happy as possible whilst still meeting the business's requirements. So Sam, for us, blanket flexible working, so our entire company works, we call it remote first. So there's no requirement to come into the office apart from 1 day a month, which we all come into together. We work a 4.5-day week. So I have Friday afternoons off, which I will go and play golf. And we do core hours. So everybody is online and working between 11 and 4. And then outside of that, you can do what you like. We also have things like a work from anywhere scheme and things like that. But knowing that that's the case for everybody makes a really big difference. And actually, we then don't get any individual requests for more, because that suits most people. But you don't have to answer this huge wish list.
And Also, maybe to add to Chasey's question on how do you convince managers. So, of course, it's very difficult if managers are ignorant towards this topic, but also having a flexible culture may improve business performance, right? If maybe this is the thing that motivates managers or the managing directors. So, for example, when we support our companies, we often do calculations. Okay, can the impact of a better employer branding be on business performance? And usually when companies have problems finding employees, so for example, during the last year, it was very hard to find people in the tech sector, good engineers. And I guess most of us can agree, like without offering flexible working, you will not find any good engineers, right? You will not find the very good ones. That's on the one hand side, but on the other side, we see a lot of people, they churn and go to another company that offers these benefits. Yeah. So can only speak for us at WorkFlex. Around last year, we were around 15 people. Now we're almost 80 people. So we were doing a lot. Oh, I think the stream was gone for a second. I think we are back now.
We lost the slides, but you're back.
We lost the slide, but I get them back. Yes, we ourselves also saw that a lot of people came to us because we are very flexible, and that's how we got very good talent and convinced them working for us. And obviously having good talent, winning good talent, but then having the talent work for you in the company, this will improve this for this huge time.
I think the truth is that the very best people will always have options, right? If you're looking to hire the best people you possibly can, like you're not their only choice. And if you can do something that's not actually disruptive once you get into it, that will increase your chance of getting those people to accept your offers, then you absolutely should. For me, at this point, it's a real no-brainer business decision.
Yeah. And we see a lot of questions coming in, which is great. And we will also deep dive them a little bit, because work from anywhere seems to be one of the main benefits driving a flexible culture.
It's one of the most popular benefits. I might get this stat slightly wrong, but I think it's about 67% of people who come and search for companies on Flexa are looking for a company with a work from anywhere benefit.
Interesting.
It's massive.
That's all. You see this from the employee side. What we see also from the company side, and maybe also the ignorant managers that we were talking about before, is that I see a lot of managers trying to enforce a culture of trust, right? And often work from anywhere policy is used as a tool to enforce this trust, because even if it's just like 10, 20 or 30 days a year when you can work from abroad, this is just a signal that, look, we trust you, and we trust that you can also work remotely. So it's not only working about remotely, but also maybe as an indicator, as a signal to employees that they can give trust when we talk to them. But let me go through some of the questions. Maybe I start with the short ones. I have some time to read the longer ones. So Chelsea's asking, how did you get to an agreement for the blanket approach? When you say it works for everyone, how did you find that out?
Yeah, so the short version of it is the first thing you need to do is understand what's actually possible for you as a business, right? You don't want to be promising 4 days a week at home and then not actually being able to follow through with that. But so really have that in your mind and understand the requirements. Like if you are a lab-based company, for example, know your limits before you go out and survey people. But then I'd run a few focus groups, right? So maybe run 3 different focus groups with 10 to 12 people in each and ask people about what they would like, but be prepared that you're basically going to get back a massive wish list of what people would want. That is the very democratic way to go about it. The other way to go about it is by just looking at the data. So there's tons of data that we have on Flexa, and maybe we can circulate some of it after this that shows, what are the most in-demand things. So, I mean, I can tell you that remote and remote first are very, very high in demand. People are not so bothered about hours, but they are really interested in work from anywhere schemes, and they're really interested in things like enhanced parental leave. So you could just give that a go, right? And say, and say, oh, we're going to trial. Trials are amazing. For the next 3 months, we're going to trial working 3 days at home or 2 days at home, whatever it is. And then we're going to review it at the end. And in the review, you need to look at business performance, at manager performance, because managers can have a really hard time transitioning to this, and your employee feedback. Do they like it or do they not? And actually what tends to happen is people love flexible working, so they work harder to try and make sure that the benefits stay. That's a very quick answer because I don't want to take up the whole webinar with teaching you how to do that, but I can absolutely send you some more resources.
Yeah. And I'm going through the chat, so really cool to see a lot of the questions. So Raphael, you asked a question, how does flexible working look like? I would actually like to pause it, maybe address it in 5 to 10 minutes because we actually brought stats for this. So it will be interesting to see. Same with also compliance is a big topic. So Chelsea, you just brought up. We will also deep dive into this in a second. But then before we do this, I think Liz asked a very good question and is asking, do you think there could be a negative impact for people in the early stages of their career? Obviously, like adapting to work, getting to know other people. So when they work remotely, this could be a little bit tougher. So we also have a lot of first-hand experience on this. And I must say it's difficult, but Beth, maybe before I answer, what is your experience with like people in the early stages of their career?
Yeah, I think it's fair. So the two famous studies that have been done that said that remote working was less productive than in office working were for two reasons. The first one, they didn't give them the right equipment to work from home. So like, how are you going to do your job? And the second one was that the company had a really high density of very junior employees. And so they learned slower. And this is where I think it comes back to that manager training. So I'm actually working on a course and a guide at the moment about how to manage remote and distributed teams, because it's something that comes up over and over again. And the truth is you can grow and learn and adapt to work, even as like a first-time, graduate or a first-time employee, if you have the right manager and the right tools, right? But without that, it is difficult. And I think from a social perspective, I can only answer for myself, right? Like everybody's different. Some people don't want to socialize with their colleagues. That's not part of their life. It's not what they want. And I think you just need to be open about that in the hiring process. So for me, in my first job, I made so many friends through work and I loved going out for drinks on a Thursday night. It was brilliant. It really made a difference to me moving to a new city. But that's not for everyone. And I think what you need to do there is be really transparent in the hiring process if you are remote, right? Because if you're a couple of days a week in the office, you get that bonding and that culture. But, ask people that question, how would it feel for you if you never met your teammates in person? How would that work for you? Just so that everybody's going in with their eyes wide open.
Yeah, and I can only second that. Remote work is not for everyone, right? So some people love going to the office and like to socialize, and that's completely fine, right? But by having, for example, work from anywhere policy, you give the option to the employee, right? And maybe up to 30 days, you give the option to work remotely. So it's again, I think that what you said in the beginning is like giving the trust, and that we trust the employee with the option. And I guess a lot of companies are also more going towards this hybrid approach, that like some days in the office and then some days abroad. So we as Workflex, we are fully remote, and I must say for people early stage of the career, it is a challenge. So especially in onboarding them, it is a little bit more challenge. It takes a different approach, and also then it's more difficult for people in the early stages of the career to understand what do actually other departments do, because they don't hear it in the hall. So we make sure there's a lot of interaction going on, but we also like going, for example, to offsites that we organize regularly to again enforce this like team spirit, etc. So given that there being a lot of questions about work from anywhere, I mean, very cool that we actually prepared for this. And before I show this is where we as Workflex, we have a lot of experience in. So we supported over 200 companies and like implementing a work from anywhere policy, but also then managing it. So we have a lot of templates and we have a lot of numbers that I will show you. And I think this is also related to the question from Rafael a few minutes ago. What does it mean implementing work from anywhere policy, right? So only short term, long term, etc. And this again, look, it depends, right? But if we talk about work from anywhere policy, it's usually 3 elements that need to be considered. And here it's every company needs to make the choice. And I think primarily the first one that we always talk about, how many days per year can you spend abroad? And this can be anything from 10 days to 180 days per year. Then the geographic regions. So for example, do you only limit it to Europe or do you open it globally? And then lastly, what are terms and conditions? So-called like what are the certain elements you need to behave to? And we support companies in guiding them through and then managing the compliance. And actually brought stats from other employers. So we reviewed the policies of over 100 employers. And we see that every employer is actually quite different, right? So having 180-day work from anywhere policy is not the right policy for every company. It depends on the industry, it depends on the culture and the DNA. So we see anything from 10 days, for example, Adidas, up to 180 days. We see a lot of companies offer like 30 days. This seems to be like a good threshold. A lot of people are comfortable with. And to be honest, with 30 days working remotely, you can do quite a lot, right? So this is like multiple extended holidays or working time month from somewhere else. Beth, when you see this also companies that you advise, what do you advise them to companies? What's the right threshold of the number of days?
So we don't usually advise on the specific number of days because, like you said, and I'm sure you'll be able to go into more, there's tons of compliance issues, tax issues, like there's a lot of stuff that we are not well positioned to advise on. But I think that having any form of a work from anywhere policy is a massive draw for people. And remember that when it says 10 days or 30 days, that's working days, right? So it's actually 10 days is 2 weeks. If you can add on another 2 weeks of holiday to anywhere in your year, like it's a lot of time. So people don't tend to worry about the amount of days, but they are really keen that it exists.
And I may add, companies who have a 0-day allowance actually doesn't mean that people don't go abroad. It often just means they don't tell their managers, right? So maybe that's also not the culture as an employer that you want to enforce, but rather be proactive about it and have a proper policy.
It's such an easy win.
So that's the first topic. The other question is often we get is like from which geographic regions. And interesting what we see in the market, there are 3 types of policies companies often engage in. One is companies say, okay, you're only allowed to work within the EU, maybe also then including UK and Switzerland. The other obvious one is global. But what we increasingly also see it's gaining popularity is, we call it here on the chart, EU plus. So this actually say, okay, you're allowed to work within Europe and your home country. So if you have, for example, a developer originally from India working in the UK, this person is also allowed to the country of home to India. And that's where you also see a lot of usage. So you don't want to make a benefit just for the people from the UK who love going to Spain, France, or Portugal to extend the holidays, but also people who have family in other countries.
Why would you? What are the benefits of suggesting where they're allowed to work from? Do you think it's a time zone thing?
Yeah, I think it's 3 things actually. I think the first one is actually a time zone thing, and it's just very easy to say Europe. But however, then we could say, but what about South Africa? It's a similar time zone, but for companies often more easier to say Europe. The second topic is still a trust topic. and also that people come back. So something happens in the office, you need to come back. But if you're in Australia, I'm not sure if I trust you that you work crazy hours. And what is if I need you in the office in London? And the third thing, a very big one, is compliance. And so compliance, and we get to this, we're experts in compliance. There are a lot of compliance concerns within Europe, but they're even bigger outside of Europe. So that's why some companies who don't have the knowledge, they're just rather limited. And I'm trying to follow the chat. Yeah, so interesting comment by Chelsea. They offer 60 days, also looking at tax implications, right? Here we have it. And it's all very difficult, right? Because in some countries, you can work for 60 days. In other countries, you can work for 90 days. In some countries, even 1 day. For example, if you need a visa or it's forbidden or it's a sanction, this might be very difficult. So yeah, it's not so complex rolling out a global policy for a lot of days. And then the third one is terms and conditions. And while I read the chat, Beth, are there any like terms and conditions that you typically see, like certain restrictions when people work abroad? They use VPN or something?
Not really. I think the biggest one we see is around synchronous versus asynchronous hours. So there are some companies who will say you're allowed to work from anywhere you like, but you still have to do the hours of your home country, right? So for example, like I'm in the UK, I've still got to be online 11 till 4 UK time. Doesn't matter where I am, right? And if that means that part of my working day, let's say if I was in Australia, part of my working day is in the middle of the night, then that's kind of the price that I'm paying for doing that. And I think that's a really personal choice. We don't do that at Flexa, although we've yet to have anyone work from Australia. But we don't do that. And the reason that we allow people to work from any time zone without having to stick to UK hours is because a lot of our work can be done without needing to be on a screen with each other at the same time. And actually, especially for more senior people in the team, where their work is very autonomous. And you know what? Most people in Flexa, in fact, if not all of us, are incredibly autonomous. The only bit that would be more difficult would be sales calls and calls with clients. That would be the only thing that would be hard not to have the hours crossover for. But otherwise, having time to get your head down is not a bad thing.
Then I caught up with the chat, by the way. So Agata is asking, how do we differentiate between typical remote work and remote work from the country of origin? I think this question was asked when we showed this slide, so EU and EU plus the policy. So yeah, this depends on your policy, but usually this is not differentiated. And what we actually see in the data, I mean, we have over 50,000 work from anywhere requests analyzed from our talents, that actually people who have their home country in different countries, for example, India or Turkey or wherever, they use the benefit twice as often as, for example, people in the UK. So for them, having the benefit to work from home, maybe to visit their family during the summer break or during Christmas, is huge, right? Much bigger than for the average British employee who would love to extend the holiday for another week in Spain. So when you do a work from anywhere policy, don't forget about the people who have family outside of Europe, because they will benefit the most. And for them, it's really a game changer benefit. And then Liz is making it easy for me also to talk a little bit about compliance, because she was talking about local employment compliance. And look, work from anywhere is a great benefit, but there are a lot of compliance topics or compliance pitfalls, I call it. And yeah, that's where it gets a little bit boring or a little bit dry, but I try to make it exciting, so stay with me. But the problem usually with companies is when you work from abroad, there's a lot of different compliance dimensions. And So we had here in the chat already local employment. I think we talked labor law, we talked tax restrictions. All of this is true, but there are many more. So I think one of the obvious ones is visa and work entitlement that need to be checked. This also is very different. So for example, if you have an employee with nationality from India, it might be different traveling to India than somebody with British nationality. So this differs then by employee. Second one is permanent establishment employment tax. So this refers to tax topics when people work from abroad. And also this is the, let's say, most dangerous risk or compliance pitfall that we need to be most careful of. So here the worry is that employee work in another country and then the company become tax eligible. So for example, so just big topics. So this happened, for example, to Netflix. They had people traveling to India that had to pay a 5 million fine. The biggest one I know personally is Bosch, a big company that had to pay 300 million fine for people traveling to India, to Italy. So it can go very crazy. Sometimes also a combination of those. Social security is a topic. However, this can be reduced the risk if you have an A1 certificate. Hope everybody knows what an A1 certificate is. So when employees go abroad and don't have social security risk, you need to actually request a document from authorities. So a lot of paperwork involved. We love it. Well, we don't. Posted workers directive is important. It's a special rule in Belgium. They want another form to be filled out. Is then rather something for business travel. Labor law topics, we had it here in this group. Data protection is obviously a topic. And the last one in insurance, and this is more related to health insurance. So usually when something happens abroad, you get injured, who pays for the cost? And often if we work from anywhere is considered as a business trip, but it isn't, but if it is considered, the company is liable for these costs and need to pay the health expenses. So, so I'm not going into depth into the aid, but I'm just saying this is a very, very complex topic, and it makes it so complex because, for example, as this pointed out in the chat, it's different in every single country. So if you go from the UK to Germany, it's different than going from the UK to France. And then if I go from Germany to France, it's again different. So it always depends on the country combination. Then, as we discussed, it depends on the employee demographics. So what's the nationality of the employee? Where do they have their home country? Then it depends on the trip. How many days are they going abroad? How often do they go abroad? What do they do abroad? And then also depends on your company policy. So it's a nightmare by itself. So actually, if you do the maths, there are 100 million scenarios because just it's very difficult for employers to say, okay, I allow 30 days per year. Because it will not be possible in every country. Then it also depends on the employee, it depends on the trip details. So it's very, very difficult to just say a standard policy. It can be used as a guidance, but then if you want to do this compliantly, you do actually need to check the regulations. So of course, it's very benefit. That's very complex, and that's allow me to do a 1-minute advertisement, and that's where we allow our support with Workflex. So that's what we support over 200 employers with, and we have a software. And within the software, we automatically in real time analyze the requests when employees go abroad. And then we also make sure you have all the right documents in place. For example, the A1, the PWD, we make sure the employee is insured, etc. So that's where we support a lot of companies in the UK, but also other countries to completely get rid of the compliance risk. As it's a software, there's no manual work needed. And we also have full transparency where your employees are. Transparency, by the way, we didn't talk about it yet so far, but maybe you want to know where are your employees currently, and having a system in place for this may help. So yeah, very, very complex. I think we could talk about compliance for ages, but then we'd rather do another compliance webinar. But why I'm saying this, let me catch up with the chat. Or Beth, do you see any questions from the chat relevant to this?
I think that there's there's a really interesting one from Niall about how to combine people returning to offices with something like a work from anywhere policy. So it's been in the news a lot, these kind of often big companies getting everybody to come back to work. Normally because they've got this massive office and hundreds of thousands of pounds of rent a month that they're wasting. And I do think that a work from anywhere policy can soften the blow of that. In fact, I know quite a lot of not even fully in office, but hybrid companies using a work from anywhere policy as well. So to give people a bit more flexibility. But I think that the flip side of this, right, is not the office rent, but it's the individual's rent. And if you've got this return to office policy, you're really limiting who can come, who can work with you, who can actually physically get there. We have people reaching out to us who are paying, almost £1,000 a week to travel into an office when they've been put back 5 days a week. It's really, really difficult. So anything that you can do to help people out in this kind of cost of living crisis and make things a bit more flexible for them is definitely a good way.
Absolutely. And then I'm still looking at all the compliance questions. So thanks for Chelsea giving the link for the A1 certificates. So yes, you need to get an A1 certificate. This as an employee you can easily request. So it's not rocket science to do this, but just takes a lot of time. We heard companies take on average 30 to 120 minutes to do it for one employee. Depends on the volume that you have. So it's additional workload. We automate it with software. And then Mary also asked, okay, where can she find additional resources? So also recommend for those, so we have a lot of materials for free on our website if you go to getworkflex.com. And what I can highly recommend, there's a compliance handbook. If you want to know anything about compliance, check it out. It's hundreds of pages about compliance. We actually try to make it easy. But also, if you want to see what other companies do, take a look at this. This is an infographic. Everything is available for free. So you can get started yourself. Or if you want to more professional help, use our software. Also, I really would love to have a conversation also afterwards, obviously. Anything to add to this, Beth?
No, I'm honestly so amazed that you guys can do all of this compliance work. I think it feels like a massive barrier to a lot of teams who are wanting to do a work from anywhere policy. And we've seen the data, people love it. Your team might be asking for it, but I can totally understand how, looking at it from the outside, it feels like a massive headache. So it's, I think anything that makes that easier is a huge win for companies.
Yeah. And then, I mean, Niall, you were previously touching upon there's a trend return back to the office. So I think this trend is real. So there's going back to the office. Rather, what we observe, it's rather into a hybrid office. So some days in the office, some days remotely. So it's becoming less common to hire people 100% remotely. And it's becoming more common to say, okay, you can work 30 days abroad, but the majority of the time we want to have you in the home country. And interesting, we had actually one new client we signed last week, and they are doing a push back to the office. But they at the same time introduced a work from anywhere policy, because they say, okay, look, we want to have you back in the office, but we still want to give you the flexibility to work remotely. So also these things combine very well. Excellent. If there are any more questions from the audience, let us know. Otherwise, I think it has been a super interesting discussion. And just to ramp it up, and I'm going here through the slides. So for me, I learned a lot also from you, Beth, today, how to measure flexibility. I mean, now we talked a lot about location, but there are also a lot of other elements to think about. We talked about that, flexibility, it's different per company. So there's not one best practice, etc. We talked about a lot on how what do other employers do when they work remotely. And then we touched upon quite a bit compliance. And yeah, look, everyone, it has been a fantastic webinar, so I would close it here. Anyone who's interested to learn more about what Flexer does, well, excellent. You already put down a link, so we make a good team. Everybody who wants to know about more what Workflex does, go to our website. We are also happy to take a call with you to analyze your policy and also maybe find improvements and discuss and cost anything. We've done this for hundreds of companies. And yeah, besides this, thanks everyone for joining. Hope to see you in another webinar very soon. And thanks a lot, Beth, again for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.